Hi, Steve Gale here. In this video, I'm just going to demonstrate building a simple local area network in Packet Tracer using 4321 router and a 2960 switch. So I'm just going to click here into network devices, and you can see here I've got routers, and I'm just going to grab a 4321 and bring it in. And then I'm going to go to switches, and I'm going to go and grab a 2960 switch. And then I'm going to select end devices, and I'll bring in a PC. So probably the next thing I need to do is to ensure that I've got the right interfaces into the router. So I'll just click on the router, and you can see here there's these two gaps here. But so what I've got to do if I want to install, say for example, the serial interfaces in the router, the NIM2T interfaces, then what I need to do is first power the router down. So switch it off because you can't plug them in live. Then I can drag one of these over here and then drag another one of those over there. And that'll give me 4 serial interfaces, which is similar to the configuration that we have in our classroom devices. So I'll power them back up again. And so what I can do now is go and do my cabling. So on my 2960, you can see I've got 24 ports. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use one port for my host computer, and I'm just going to use one port, and I'm going to use FA00. I'm not going to use the uplink port, so I'm just going to use FA00 to connect to my router. So let's just drag that over there, and let's go to connections, and I'll just go to Ethernet connections. And first of all, I'll just fast Ethernet. Actually, I use Gigabit Ethernet 01, and I'll just connect that to Gigabit Ethernet 000 on my, you can see here I've got these displayed. Gigabit Ethernet 000 on the router, connected to Gigabit Ethernet 01 on the switch. So from the PC to the switch, I'm going to use a straight through connector cable, and I'm going to go from fast Ethernet 0 to I'll go to which port? I'll go to fast Ethernet 01 on here. So FA0 to FA01. Notice that I had 24 fast Ethernet ports because I've got 24 fast Ethernet ports, and I've got 2 gigabit ports. I've got my gigabit port, which is my uplink port connected to the router. So this is a local area network here. And if I wanted to expand that into another network, then what I could do is I could go and get a go back to network devices and get another router here. And whoops, don't want a 1941. I'll just, sorry, I'll just delete that router and escape. And another 4321 here. Then another 2960 switch here. And another end device or another PC. And I could replicate the same thing. And then I could use my other Gigabit Ethernet port for connecting the 2 routers. But I'm only just going to worry about one local network. Just to show you how I would do that, I could just do the same thing here. So fast Ethernet 00 to fast Ethernet 01, the first port. Then Gigabit Ethernet 01 to Gigabit Ethernet 00. And then I can just use my other Gigabit Ethernets to connect these 2 local area networks together to construct a wide area network. So let's do that. I'll click in here and I'll go Gigabit 01 to Gigabit 01. So just focusing on this first LAN, what I'm going to do is I want to be able to, I'm not going to configure the switch. I'm just going to use the default switch configurations, but I want to configure the router. So to configure the router, what I need to do is I need to make a console connection from the PC to the router. So I'll click on my console connection, and I'll connect between RS-232 to the console connection of the router. So I can use a virtual terminal program, a virtual terminal app in my PC to configure this router. So if I was going to do the other network, I'd do the same thing. So over here, RS-232 to the console, and then the same. I could I could just use a virtual terminal app in the PC, such as if it was a metal PC, I'd use, say, Terraterm or PuTTY. But given that this is a virtual PC inside of Packet Tracer, I can just use the terminal app. So let's have a look at the terminal app. So let's go to the PC and click on the PC and go to desktop. And you can see here I've got a command prompt and I've got a terminal app. So but before I go and do that, I might just set the IP configuration of the PC. So I'm going to go in here and click here, and I'm going to provide an IP address for the fast Ethernet interface of 192.168.1.10, and subnet mask will be 255.255.255.0 because it's a class C network, and I'm not doing any subnetting. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the default gateway 192.168.1.1, and that's going to be the address of the interface of the gigabit 000 interface of my router, which will be my default gateway. So if I wanted to communicate between this PC and this PC, then I would do so using the default gateway. So packets would be sent via the default gateway, and then this router would then route across to this router, and this router would then forward them out to this PC. So to be able to go outside of this network, I need to set the default gateway, and that will allow this PC to send packets which are destined for other networks to the router, and then the router will then forward them on accordingly. Okay, so I've set my IP configuration. So the next thing I can do is I can go about configuring the router. So I'm going to call this R1. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll quit out of the IP configuration, and I'll go to my terminal mode, and I'll just say OK to the default settings. And this brings up the router iOS. And the first thing it says is, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? And I'll say no to that, because I'm going to configure it manually. Press return to get started. So I press return. So you can see I start off and I'm in user mode. So what I want to do, because I'm going to configure the router, I need to be in privileged mode. So I'm going to type enable, and it won't require a password at this stage because I haven't set a password. And you can see now from the prompt that I've gone from user mode to privileged mode. So in privileged mode, I'm going to go config from terminal, config T, oops, with an N. And you can see now I'm in router config mode. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the command no IP domain lookup. And that command is really useful in the sense that if you mistype a command, it won't try and do a DNS to resolve that command. So I'm going to just paste this command in here, which is no IP domain lookup, and hit enter. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the host name. So host name, I'm going to call it R1. So now you can see the command prompt is now, or the prompt is now changed to R1 config. So if I was doing this router here, I'd probably make this router R2. So, but I'll get onto that one later. So this is R1 config. The next thing I want to do is set an enable password, and I'm going to call it class, consistent with all of the labs in the Cisco Academy. So enable secret class. So now if I was to log out and log back in again, if I type the word enable, I would need to provide the enable password or the enable secret of class to be able to log in. So what I'm doing is I'm securing the privileged mode in the router via a password. The other thing I also should do is I was able to just, console in directly and get into user mode. So I really should secure that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a password on the console connection, and I'm going to do that with this command here, which is line con 0. So that's my console interface, and you can see I go into config line mode here. So now I'm going to set the password as Cisco. So I'll just paste that command in here, password of Cisco, and I'm going to say that you need to log in. So you need to log in, and then I'm going to just exit out of the config line mode and just type exit here. And you can see I've gone out of config line mode and I'm back to config mode. Now, the other thing I should do is I should set a banner message of the day. And the reason for that is that if somebody tries to hack into your infrastructure, or say, for example, hack into my router, then I need to have a banner message which basically tells them that it's illegal to do that. Otherwise, I've got no legal comeback. So I'm going to just paste this message in. Unauthorized access is strictly prohibited and prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and then hit enter. And I've set my banner up. So now I can exit the config mode, type exit. And if I wanted to have a look at what I've configured, then what I can do is I can do what's called a show running config. So with show running config, I can see that if I look at the configuration, which starts from here, you can see my host name is router1. My enable secret is encrypted, and you can see here that's my password of class, which has been encrypted, and it's been encrypted to level 5. I'll just hit tab. And what else have I configured? I haven't configured the interface yet, so you can see there's no IP address on the interface. I'll do that next. Having configured the other gigabit interface or the serial interfaces. I've got my message of the day, and you can see here's my message of the day. And then I've got my console connection with my password Cisco and requiring a login, and then that's the end. Now, if I wanted to save this configuration, what I can do is I can copy all of this just by highlighting it, and I go up to the very top of where I started that here, where it says here to here, and then right click this and go copy. And then what I can do is I can bring up Notepad and then just paste that in. And what I've got is I've basically got a copy of that configuration, which I'll just go file and I'll save that as, and I'll put that somewhere relevant. I'll just find a relevant place. Let's have a look. And I'll just call this lab 2 R1 config A, and I'll give it the date 06/10/22, and I'll save that as a text file. Now, if I wanted to then, rather than going through all of those commands, if I just wanted to edit this and then paste it in, I can actually do that as well. And I might do that for the other router just to demonstrate how that works. So let's just put that away now. Now, the other thing is, if I wanted this router to then, this is now in the running configuration, but it's only sitting in memory. It's sitting in RAM inside of the router. And if I want this configuration to be remembered on reboot, if this router was to power down and reboot, then what I need to do is I need to do a copy the running config to the startup config. And I'll do that in Packet Tracer. So I'll just paste the command for doing that, which is copy running config to startup config, and I'll just hit enter. And then now what I've done is I've saved my configuration into non-volatile RAM, so that if the router was to reboot, it would retain this configuration. So that's, so yeah, because technology devices can power cycle and do that sort of thing. So you always want to make sure that you've got a backup. So here I'm just going to do a show version, and you can see here I can see what version of the iOS I'm running. So here I've got ASR 4300 universal bin. So and when you see the more command, you just press the space bar and you can get more information. It tells you information about what features come with that iOS version, how much memory is available, what interfaces are available. And so it gives you some basic information about the device. If I do a show IP interface brief, so I'll just run this command here, show IP interface brief. What it does is it tells me that about my interfaces and the IP configuration of my interfaces. So you can see that I've got two gigabit interfaces, gigabit 000 and gigabit 001, and these are both down. I don't have IP addresses on them, and they're administratively down. My serial interfaces, which I'm not using, they're also down as well. But what I need to do is, if I want this PC to be able to communicate with this router, then I need to set this gigabit 00 interface up with an IP address, and then enable it so that it's no longer administratively down, so that it's actually up and running. So that's the next thing that I'm going to do. So the way I do that is I type in interface gigabit 000. Now, what you'll notice here is in the lab, it might say interface gigabit 00, but if I'm using a 4321, you can see the interface is gigabit 000. So I need to add an extra /0 on there. And whoops, I need to be in config mode to do that. So I just type config terminal. I can use config T for short. Now in config mode, I'm just going to repaste that interface gigabit 00/0, and oops. Okay, let's just make it short. Let's just put G000. Yep, and I know that's going to work. So interface gigabit 000, and I then go into config interface mode. So now what I can do is I can configure this particular interface. So I want to give it an IP address and also a subnet mask. So I'm going to paste this command in, and what this will do here is this will give it an IP address of 192.168.11.1, which was the default gateway that we set for this PC, and a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, seeing it's a Class C network. Now, the other thing I need to do is to type no shutdown. So what no shutdown does is it means that the interface is no longer shut down. Now, all interfaces are shut down by default from a security perspective. So whatever interfaces you actually want to use, you need to manually enable them by using the no shutdown command. And you'll see here that the gigabit 00 has changed its state to up, and you can see this light, or this LED on that interface, is now turned to green, and eventually this one will turn to green as well. So that's good. So I just hit enter and I get my config. Now I'm still in config interface mode. I don't need to be in config interface mode, but if I was to now run, if I now exit from here and run my I use the up arrow to cycle through my commands. The one I'm looking for is for the no. Oh no, I need to go exit one more time, sorry. Out of config mode. And context sensitive, then what I want the show IP interface brief command. So now if I run this again, what you'll see is that gigabit Ethernet 000 has an IP address and its status is up. And you can see that by the green light. Notice that the green light now has appeared on the switch. So when I see green, 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 I know that I've got a physical connection which is up between this PC and this router. So what I can do now is I can try, and from here, if I wanted to, what I can do is I should really save this configuration. So what I could do, if I do a show running configuration now, and I'll just cycle back through the commands, show my running configuration. Let's have a look at it. And I'll hit spacebar, spacebar, spacebar again, one more time. So let's go and have a look at our running configuration now. So you can see I've still got my host name. I've got my enable secret. That hasn't changed. But this is what's changed. See how I've got gigabit Ethernet 000 has an IP address and a subnet mask, and it's not shut down. Whereas this one here, which we haven't tampered with, this interface here, is still shut down by default. And you can see that it's in the red mode. And I've still got my banner, and I've still got my console password as well. So now I'm going to do a copy run start. So I'm going to copy the running config to the startup configuration. So, and hit enter. So now if I was to power cycle this router, it would then remember this configuration. So this configuration would be remembered. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a ping test. I'm going to try and ping this PC. And if you remember this PC here, if I go to the PC 0, and I'm still in terminal mode, but if you remember the PC, the config, you can see here that the default gateway was this, but the fast Ethernet address was 192.168.1.10. So I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to ping the PC. So I'm going to ping 192.168.1.10 just to have a look and see whether I've got connectivity. And the PC should respond. And you can see here that the PC is responding. First one didn't go through because the router had to think about where it had to send the packet. But from now on, you'll find that all of those pings will be successful because the router now knows how to get on this network. So if I was now to go to the PC, oh, actually, before I do, I'll just do a show running config again. Hit the space bar a couple of times, and I'm going to go and copy this change configuration, just like I did before, into Notepad. So here I'm going to copy that. So right click and copy, and I'm going to go into Notepad, and I'm just going to do a Control A, Control V, and file, save as, and I'll call this lab R1 config B, and save. Okay. So I've saved my configuration on this device. So if I wanted to go to the PC and I get out of the terminal and I go to command prompt, I can try and ping my default gateway now. So I can try ping 192.168.1.1, which is my default gateway. So I'm going to try and ping this router to see if I've got connectivity. And you can see here that I'm getting a reply back. So yeah, I've got no problems pinging my default gateway. So there was a bit involved to set this router up, but a very quick way of setting this router up from this one is if I go into this PC here and I go into desktop mode and I go into terminal and I hit OK, and I'll just say no to this and I'll type enable. Notice that there's no password required because I haven't set a enable password on this router and it isn't named. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into config mode. Config terminal. And I'm going to go and have a look at this configuration. And I'm just going to play with this configuration. I'm going to change the host name from R1 to R2. I'll leave the enable secret. I'm going to make this the 2 network. So I'll make that 2.1 and I'll leave everything else the same. And I'll leave the banner. I'll leave the console password. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this R2 config because this is going to be the configuration for R2. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go Control A, Control C. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this one and I'm just going to right click and I'm just going to paste that configuration in and hit enter. Now you can see here I've got the R2 prompt. Yeah. So what I've done is I've just been able to reconfigure this router just from that saved configuration from the other router with a few slight changes. And if I do a show IP interface brief, now I should see that I've got this one here, 192.168.2.1, but it's still down. And the reason it's still down is because what I didn't have in that configuration was a no shutdown command. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and I'm going to edit this one. And I'm just going to go in here. I could go into interface mode and do this, but I'm just going to put in here, I'm just going to put in no shutdown. like so. Better spell it properly. Shut down. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go Control A, Control C. I'm going to go back to here. And I'm going to go back to config mode. Like so. And I'm just going to paste it in now. Notice here that this Ethernet interface is now changed state to up. So now if I now do a show IP interface brief, what I've done is I've added the no shutdown command into gigabit interface 000, and so it's now up. So basically my router is configured. So I'm going to just do a copy run start, which is shorthand for copy the running config to the startup config. Whoops, need a P there. Copy running config to startup config and hit enter. And now I've saved that configuration. So if I power cycle this router, it will remember its configuration. So the last thing I need to do before I can ping this PC is I need to put interface configuration on the PC. So I'm going to go to desktop and I'm going to quit out of the terminal, go to IP configuration, and I'm going to make, now remember this is on the 2 network, it's not on the 1 network. So I'm going to make this 192.168.2.10, subnet mask default class C, and my default gateway is now 192.168.2.1. So, and I don't need to set a DNS, so I'm going to quit out of that. So what I've done is, this is the 2 network, so I'll just put here, I'll just put some IP addresses. So I'll just put here 192.168.2.1 and 192.168.2.10. This is just for documentation purposes. 192.168.1.10, and here I've got 192.168.1.1. Hit escape on that. So what I should be able to do now, because I've configured this PC, I've configured this router, is I'll go to my PC, I'll run command prompt, and I'll try and ping the default gateway, which is ping 192.168.2.1, and I should get success. So yep. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to successfully connect from this PC to this router, and I'm also able to successfully connect from this PC to this router. So the next thing to do, and I'm not going to do this in this video, but the next thing to do would be to configure these 2 interfaces and also to configure routing between the networks so that this PC can communicate with this PC here. Notice that this is a local area network. This is the 192.168.1 network. This is the 192.168.2 network. And to be able to communicate between one local area network and another local area network, I need to go via the router or via the default gateway. And then those packets, those IP packets, then need to be routed between routers to get to the destination local area network. Okay, well, thanks very much for watching, and